Hey folks, y'all all know about the algorithm, right? Yeah, so what I need you to do is like, share, and subscribe. I need you to help me with the algorithm. I need you to like, share, and subscribe, and please leave a comment because the more that you do to help me, the more visible this gets, and the more this information gets out to other people. Again, thank you, and let's start the show. Let me just warn you ahead of time. I might have an emotional response to this video. So, just got one thing to say. You woke? Time to get up. So, if you haven't heard the story of Tyre Nichols, and maybe you haven't seen the details about him, I actually looked up some of the details about this young man. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, if you know it, if you've been listening to the news or seeing things on the internet, there was a young man in Memphis, Tennessee that was beat up by police officers there and killed, or who died 3 days later. Um, those officers have since been arrested, and I'll talk about them in a little while. But I just want to do a little bit of background on Tyre Nichols. He was from Sacramento, California originally. He grew up in Sacramento, California. He had a love for skateboarding and photography. So those were two things he did while he was there. At some point, I guess his parents decided, or his mother decided to move to Memphis, and he came to live with his mother in Memphis. Um, One news article says he kind of got stuck. In about 2019, 2018, he came up there, and a lot of people lost contact with him in Sacramento, but they all came to see him when he passed away. Um, Again, he was 29 years old. Here's some things I can tell you about him. He was the youngest member of his mother's children. He has a 4-year-old child. I don't know if it's a girl or a boy. He was working at FedEx with his stepfather. And he still was enjoying doing his photography. He made some comments about, this is his life and how he sees the world, so on and so forth. He has a website, I believe it's called The California Kid. You can look that up online. It's Tyre Nichols. It shows different photos that he's done, including black and white photos, color photos, taking railroad sky scenes, and so forth. Apparently that night, he was in fact going out taking pictures of the sky over Memphis. And at some point on January 7th, he was stopped by the police. And that's where the first video starts. It's like these two officers jump out the car, pointing their guns at him. They open the door. He goes like, "What's going on, guys? Hey, we don't have to do all this. You guys seem like you're a little fired up here." He said, "We don't have to do this." They pulled him out of the car. Were demanding that he roll over on his stomach, that he put his hands behind his back. They were pulling his hands. And one of the officers pulled out a taser. That's when Tyre Nichols got up and he took off running. The officer, of course, hit him with the taser. The other one was spraying him with pepper spray and managed to spray himself in the face. So Tyre got away. So an alert went out that Tyre had gotten away. And in fact, he ran all the way. He was running home because that's where he said he was going in the video. He says, "I was headed home. I'm just going home. That's all I want to do is go home." Now, here's the thing. Supposedly, he was reckless driving. That was why he got pulled over. Okay, I get getting pulled over for reckless driving, but what was the point of pulling out your guns, pointing at the guy, and demanding that he get out the car? It looks like they were doing a little bit much for just a regular traffic stop. And like Tyre was saying, he was like, "I can't believe this. I don't understand what y'all are doing here. Seems like y'all a little fired up." He seemed like he was in his right mind because one of the things that the police tried to say after they did what they did to him was that he must have been hyped up on drugs. Now, here's the first thing I'm going to say about these guys, these 5 black men that beat this man. There are 5 Memphis police in the city, and this is no excuse. So please don't think I'm trying to give them any kind of excuse for what they did. They're in a city where it's a high murder rate. It's a lot of violent crime there in that city. These 5 guys were on what we call the gang unit. So they dealt with the most violent people, criminal, or people in the city. Now, that gives no excuse for what they've done. None whatsoever. It gives no excuse for their actions that they've taken against a guy that supposedly was speeding. Now, it does say something about the things they were saying about him. Say, oh, he must have been strung out on drugs. He must have been high. He must have been all these things. No, he was a scared young man. He saw policemen that seemed like they were a little overzealous about their job. Now, these 5 officers, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills Jr., and Justin Smith, have all been charged with second-degree murder, 2 counts of official misconduct, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 1 count of official oppression, 1 count of aggravated assault. That first charge is enough. Second-degree murder. Because if you watch the video, it's a sad scene. This poor young man getting kicked in the head, punched in the head, beat with a baton while somebody was holding him in each one of these cases. And even though we're talking about these 5 officers, in total there was 12 to 13 officers around, maybe even more, a supervisor, plus 2 EMS officers, 2 paramedics, who did nothing to help Terry Nichols after they beat him, after they maced him in the face several times while he was laying on the ground in their custody. They did not come to the aid of this man at all. Those 2 EMS workers have been suspended for what they did, but they have not been charged with anything. Personally, if you ask me, as the police chief said, there are probably going to be more charges. And it should be. We're looking at a problem because it doesn't look like these guys. If you watch this video, they've done that before. That's not something new for them at all. And I know the way they looked at Tyre Nichols was another thug on the street. That's what they were looking at him as. Another thug on the street. You can tell by how they were acting. You can tell by what they said. So you saw him. He was grabbing at my gun. The man not one time in the video grabbed at anybody's gun, because throughout the entire video, the police had absolute control of the situation, except for the one where he got away. And that was on them because they let him go because all they wanted to do was tase him. As soon as they reached out to tase, so I'm pulling the taser, everybody pulls their hand away. That's why Tyre Nichols got up and ran. The only reason why he got up and ran. It is an absolute disturbing thing to watch. I can't believe I sat through and I watched the whole thing, but I did because I want to be able to give truth to this. You have to vet the people that you put in office. You have to vet the people that you put in a job like the police. They never want to use this word COP, but they are that. They're citizens on patrol. They're people on the street. They're human beings, capable of great good and great evil all at the same time. Like I said before, there are police departments that have decided to reform, especially in upstate New York. There's one police department where before a person even decides to become a police officer, they have to take a lie detector test. They have to go through several psychological evaluations. If they score a certain degree on this, I think it's like a 9 or more, that for a tendency to be violent, they're not going to get the job. They do not make good police officers. Now, the problem with any of this is that the Supreme Court said that you could take a person who has 0 IQ and make them a police officer. That IQ has nothing to do with it. If you ask me, IQ has a lot to do with it. Also, psychological tendencies has a lot to do with this job. There are some people who find power in being in a uniform and will abuse that power at all costs because of certain things in their life, because they don't feel adequate in their life without that uniform or without that gun or without that badge. Those are the kind of people you do not need to be police officers. Then there are those who have violent tendencies towards whatever the reason is, they have a violent tendency. And that's what I think happened in this case. These are men who are in a stressful job, stressful situation, and they will take control of that situation in a very violent way. There's a difference between a sociopath and a psychopath, and they think they're borderline psychopath. And as everybody said, time and time again, it's not their first go round. And the conduct of the other police officers says a lot too. The fact they're like, okay, well, here's another black guy we've arrested in Memphis. OL. He just basically must have deserved it. He must be one of these thugs like all these other thugs on the street that shooting and killing and drug dealing and all that other stuff. It's a bad mentality to have. It's a bad way to look at life, but it happens to people who constantly are doing the job. You know, you hear stories about people who work in the medical field. They become insensitive to the patients and their pains and their ills and those who pass away and the emotional responses of the family because they do this over and over again. Same with police officers. You have to continuously psychologically evaluate the police officer we put on the street. There is no way to justify what they did here. None whatsoever. Not for a speeding ticket. Once again, we've seen this time and time again. A traffic stop turns into tragedy. When is it going to stop? When are we going to change what we decide to do? We've talked about a qualified immunity. We've talked about the George Floyd bill. We've talked about cities and states taking an opportunity to vet their police departments. I believe in unions, but sometimes the unions get in the way. Police unions have been getting in the way of proper reform in cities. Then now we have politicians getting in the way of that for their own personal reasons, whether they be racist or other things. It's not always racism, but it's this ideal of holding on to your idea of what America is and not what it really should be. Like I said, policemen should be held to a higher standard. If their job is so life and death situations, I mean, they literally are in life and death situations. We need to hold our police to a standard higher than most other people because we're allowing them to carry a gun and they have them to make that split-second decision on the street about how to treat a person. We've said they need mental health workers in situations where a person is having mental distress or there's a domestic issue before police step in and do what police do by force. We're talking about a person that's not a psychiatrist who's been to school, who's been through clinical practices and things like that to handle people on the street. We're talking about a person that took 6 months at an academy, then a couple of months riding around a squad car, and we expect them to not only deal with mental issues, but deal with domestic issues, deal with any kind of situation. We expect them to deal with that, and we're not going to pay them properly in the process, but we're going to put them on the street and let them do what they do. I'm going to give them a gun, a badge. I'm going to give them a taser. I'm going to give them mace. I'm going to give them a baton. It gives them the power and the authority to do what they do, and that right there is an issue in the first place. Maybe we should, allow a person to have at least 2 years of college trained in this particular thing, then several months in the academy on top of that. Maybe we should think about how we're doing this. We definitely need civilian oversight of all police departments. I don't care where you are in the United States right now. We need a civilian oversight of all police departments. It balances out the power. But there's a pushback again by politicians and by police unions. Maybe we have to do like Camden. Maybe we do need to disband the police department in order to get the police unions out of it and then fix the problem. So we can properly vet and put the right police officers on the street so that they can deal with the communities they live in. that can cut down on some of the stress. Yes, we do have a problem, so we do need the police. But we need police that are not feeling under siege, but feel like they're doing the job and doing their duty to the best of their job. A lot of times I feel like the police don't know the communities they're in. They're just there doing the job, so I don't care about this community. What I want to do is police this community. But if I know the people that I'm working with, if I have a sense of community with the people I'm in, I treat them better than if I'm just that police officer there, that authority figure there, who doesn't know the person I'm dealing with. So we need some logical changes to the police force. We need some logical changes to the things we do, so that mothers like Rovan Wells will not have to suffer watching their children die. So that a child will have a father at home. We need to make some serious changes in our society. Well, folks, I'm all out of time. I want to thank you again, and I want to take this opportunity to ask you to please like, share, and follow. And if you have some ideas, please comment below. And y'all have a wonderful day. Peace.
You have been listening to Thoughts You're Woke, No Speed Limit Podcast.